Have you ever heard of Fit Talk, or are your patients or children changing their diets without real reason? Well, in today's episode, we'll be talking about the intersectionality of disordered eating and social media. We'll be talking to a world-class expert who deals with this on a daily basis in her practice, and we'll be covering the red flags as well as trigger warnings when it comes to disordered eating and excessive use of social media. It will be a heavy topic, but buckle up because that's why we're here in this week's episode of Sight Child.
All right. Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Carolina, third year medical student, and today we'll be talking about sort of the intersection of eating disorders with the rise of social media. And we're joined here today with an expert, Dr. Sherry. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and sort of give us a little background.
Sure, I'd love to. Thank you for having me. So I'm Dr. Tina Sherry. I'm a clinical psychologist, and my practice is in Northern New Jersey. It's the North Jersey Center for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy. It's a mouthful, but we do specialize in all things eating related, eating and weight disorders. And we have other areas of specialty as well, but we are very, very passionate about treating eating disorders. And I'm happy to be here to talk with you today.
Perfect. Well, I'm excited to learn about a lot of what you do and sort of your expertise. Before we dive into some of the more social media questions, if you want to just give a little background on how you got into the eating disorder landscape or what kind of turned you into this field.
Sure. I've always had a passion for the clinical work. I was on a crisis hotline as an undergrad at Tufts University, and helping people in such distress and being there with them really spoke to me. And so I knew I wanted to do something that was really clinical. So that's how I chose the PsyD program at Rutgers. And then it was really just a tremendous stroke of luck that my mentor ended up being Terrence Wilson. Terry Wilson is an international eating disorder expert. He's helped to write the DSM and do all kinds of new treatments around the world, actually. And he actually took me into the clinic where I worked for a number of years. And upon graduating my internship, he asked me to come back, and I was a therapist in a treatment study of binge eating disorder. So I've done anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorder. We'll get into later. ARFID now is the newest of the areas that I'm into. Mm-hmm. But we have been treating all the different types of disorders with eating for my whole career. And so I started the center back in 2010 because in the Northern New Jersey area, there weren't a lot of evidence-based treatments. There were a lot of therapists, but not evidence-based treatments. And it really does make a difference to do an evidence-based treatment for eating disorders. So we specialize in CBTE, which we may or may not talk more about today, but we also do DBT, dialectical behavior therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, a lot of different evidence-based therapies that really work to treat eating disorders.
Yeah, great. I'm excited to hear more about them a little later on when we talk about sort of how we can manage these issues teens and adolescents and kids are having. I think we'll start with the big general question about just over the past decade, with especially the explosion of social media and new apps coming about. How have you seen this change the area of eating disorders, maybe between your patients or research work, whatever work you do within the eating disorder space?
It has changed tremendously. That is one of the reasons I was really excited to join you and speak about this topic. Mm-hmm. Because my practice started back in 2010, I've watched many trends go over many years. And with the new social media, when Instagram and TikTok came about, the ages that we would get phone calls for, we used to say we treated kids 14 and up. That was how we started. And now I have a 6-year-old starting today. So the ages upon which that the kids are seeing and understanding and getting influenced, whether negatively or positively, it's really starting to be earlier and earlier. So our practice now has catered to start seeing kids as young as 5-6 years old. And another area of change, which I think we'll get to later, is that we're getting a lot more calls, not just for females, but for males. And that has significantly changed over, I'd say, the past even 5 or 6 years. So there really are those two major changes of younger onset and extension to more males that I have seen in our practice here.
Wow, yeah. Um, yeah, I feel like the rise of everything is like also exposing these people like populations we might have not been looking at earlier. Um, I know you mentioned TikTok and Instagram. Are those some of the platforms you've been seeing talked about most, or have you heard of any others that kids have been looking at content on?
So I am the first point of contact at the practice. As the director, I speak to all when the parent calls in the first place. They speak with me, and that is one of the first things that I'll ask is sort of like, how did this come about? Where did you see these behaviors starting from? And they will tell me. The parents will very often say, it started the summer that we gave her Instagram, or it started when her friends they started doing this challenge on TikTok of how they were supposed to be eating or exercising. So I anecdotally get this information from the parents. And then when we have the child come in, we do also assess, what level that they're using and what they're following and what they're actually taking in and consuming that way. So yes, that's been told to me time and time again.
And
Gotcha.
I'm really curious when we talk about, there's all different types of eating disorders that Casey and I see on the medical side, whether it's anorexia or whether it's bulimia or ARFID. What is the kind of diagnosis correlate that you're seeing as more screen time and more access to social media? Is it one of the three? Is it all three? Or is it different entities that are coming about?
I actually think it spurs all types of eating disorders because the real root of eating disorders is the over evaluation of shape and weight. That is
Yeah.
how many of them begin with over evaluation of shape or weight. So if you're taking in, consuming media that shows you that a really teeny tiny thin body is the ideal, and that some people will post what I eat in a day, for example, that's a really common trend right now. A
Mhm.
lot of people are out there posting what I eat in a day. And if you're watching that, what someone eats in a day is a little bit of salad, a slice of grilled chicken, and you're eating, regular 3 meals and 3 snacks, you're going to feel like you're not doing enough. You're going to feel like you're eating too much. So I do think it can spur in any direction. I don't think it's just one over the other. I think, and also there's that whole area, as I'm sure you know, people who do not meet the full diagnostic criteria for anorexia, but are really still having a lot of dietary restraint, really, really terrible behaviors that are not safe, not healthy. So I think it can go in any direction, actually.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I got the opportunity to attend the International Eating Disorder Conference as well. And there was one presentation that mentioned when using their mental health kind of resource and guide, where they had it posted and not on TikTok, they were getting more calls related to anorexia. And then when they looked at the TikTok calls, I think it was a majority was binge eating disorder. So it is interesting to see where these like sort of populations start to change and maybe the ages are different. And I'm really curious when you're saying you're getting these calls from parents and whatnot. We know sometimes parents might be overly worried, but what are some of those red flag signs you will see that someone should come in, the kind of red flag signs from overuse of social media that you think or you have seen may lead to eating disorder behaviors?
That's a great question because, this is a sad thing to say, but in our country, we have something called normative discontent, which means that about 75% of people, if you were to ask them, would you like to be thinner? Would you like to change your weight and shape? Would say yes. So we already start with people feeling some dissatisfaction and a desire to change their bodies. So what separates those people from those with, like you're saying, actual red flags of a real disorder would be, I'd say, the extent to which they're using these behaviors. So if you have a child who used to be a completely normal eater and now suddenly is saying, I will not eat any junk food, I will not eat sweets, I will not eat carbs, they start eliminating entire food groups. That is a red flag if they're eliminating, that whole category. Another red flag is the amount of time that they're spending on their exercise plans. If they're not going out with friends to go to the gym, or if they get really, really angry, upset, if they're not able to go to the gym, or if they have an injury and they can't exercise and they try to exercise anyway. These are some of the areas that we really see a lot of isolation, where they're just up in their room on their phones looking at these things, not downstairs, not with the family. those are some of the red flags that families can see right away to see this is a change. This is not how, my child was before. And or those become more extreme over time. So a person who starts cutting out a little bit of sugar, who then will really get upset about a piece of birthday cake, that's really becoming a problem now. Because everyone should be able to have a slice of birthday cake. That's a normal, event. And if you're not able to do something like that, or a family vacation when they're not able to eat what the family's eating on vacation, those are signs that this is really not just being a little healthier. This is really a rigid dietary rule and restraint that they're exhibiting, and that is a time to get help.
I'm kind of curious from the clinical side too, when you're evaluating patients or coming in, do you ask them about like their social media use, and are there things that you see that maybe people could notice themselves that they're being requested, or certain trends that are being recommended for them? I heard you saying like, oh, a lot of this is what I eat for a day. And if those are all the videos that they're seeing, maybe that could bring up some questions. So I'm just wondering if there's other things like, oh, I see you're using filters for every single picture. Can you tell me about that, or a little bit more? Are there trends that people can maybe self-identify, or that clinicians should know to ask about when we're talking to these patients?
So we assess social media use in a broad category. We assess what's called checking behaviors in general, just checking behaviors of how much the person is checking their body shape, their body size, their pictures, what they're posting, what other people's bodies look like comparing to other bodies. So social media falls within all of those areas. Those are the behaviors that really do fuel an eating disorder, when you are spending a lot of time checking. Again, whether you're checking what other people look like compared to you, whether you're checking what your pictures looked like last summer versus this summer, whether you're checking what you're eating versus what other people are eating. Some people will go as far as like standing in front of the mirror for a long time with their phones, taking different pictures from different angles. So we do assess all those checking behaviors to see, how much time are people spending with this. When you're getting ready in the morning, I always say to parents, that's another tip off. I'm like, are they in front of the mirror for like 10 minutes, or are they in there for like an hour? Because you should have just a few minutes to go in there, make sure no hair is sticking straight up, make sure your makeup your outfit matches, and be out of there. And if you're standing in front of the mirror for those longer periods of time with your phone and, looking at other people and comparing how you look to them, then that's really a significant problem. So parents, I hope, and I advise them to monitor how much time is spent on the phone. And I know you guys are the media experts over me. I'm more the clinical expert, but I know there are a lot of parental controls, and I do advise parents to look at the parental controls, and you can see who your child is following. You can see these things.
Thank you. Yeah.
I think that brings me back also, as child and adolescent psychiatrists and in digital media, we always ask about parental controls, and parents are always overwhelmed by how many there are out there. There are also a lot of applications for eating disorders, and the whole startup industry of how to, and digital therapeutics. And we've talked about that in previous shows. Have you heard about any of these digital therapeutics? And I don't want to put you on the spot of recommendations or advise against, but what are the experts talking about regarding digital therapeutic eating disorder devices to help people reduce some of these problematic behaviors?
As our technology gets better, there are pros and cons. There are some ways that it's great that you can get more self-help or more quick help, via an app or via your phone. But then I remember in the New York Times, I think it was last year, they had a bot trying to answer some of the calls coming in for eating disorders, and the bot was giving the wrong information. It was saying like, oh, you can lose more weight by cutting out these foods. And they had to pull it. They had to say, this is not effective. This is not helpful. So I think it really depends. In some ways it can be helpful. In some ways it can really be harmful. To me, from doing this my whole career, there's no replacement than a really experienced, clinical psychologist, someone who knows the CBTE training and who's done, full training. Anybody that you reach out to, other ways, you're not sure what they're telling you to do. Some of the plans are, sometimes it can be they're encouraging certain types of diets, and someone who's had a real true eating disorder should not be on any type of diet. So it's tricky. It's very tricky.
My other question is, how do we encourage people, or where can we tell them to go and kind of get help? Or where would you kind of direct them to try to figure out a better healthy plan or healthy eating?
I'm mentioning sites. One of the best sites for any information, and I probably will even quote some of the statistics from there, is ANAD, ANAD.org. Yeah. That site has right there resources, questions. What does an eating disorder look like? They provide mentoring and support which is really helpful. So if anybody listening to this or in general is like, I don't know where to start, I would say go to the ANAD website, because that is a really fantastic way, because there's actual information there, there's help, there's resources. They have areas. How do you pick a therapist? What types of degrees do therapists have in this field? You know, it really breaks it down, as well as NEDA, the National Eating Disorder Association website, also has a lot of really helpful information in terms of how do you know a real expert? How do you know how to get started in therapy? What does therapy look like? What would be the right track for me? So those are the two that I would say tried and true and safe and stamped with, you know, approval, that you'd get the right information going there.
That's wonderful. Thank you for answering that. That's so helpful. That's so helpful.
Yeah, if you're following like an influencer, whether on TikTok or Instagram, you don't know their background. Some people are on there saying that they've recovered from an eating disorder, and this is what I did. And while that could be great for that person, that may not work for other people. So I don't encourage people to follow people that way, because it's hard to know exactly what they're instructing you to do. And I feel like if you have a trained professional, they will make a team for you. One of the things we do in clinical practice is that we make a team for the person. So they will have a psychologist, but they can also have a nutritionist. And the nutritionist, to your point, Casey, can really sit down and go over their food logs with them, a registered dietitian, and help them really look at their all or nothing food rules or all or nothing thinking about, you know, I can't eat these foods will make me fat, these foods I'm too scared to eat. And we can do actual exposure. That's a really important part of good eating disorder treatment, is doing exposure work to expose people to their feared foods, the foods that they think this will definitely make me gain weight. I can't have a slice of pizza. Well, as you know, when kids go to their friends' houses, they have pizza parties, or they have sports events, they have pizza parties. So if you're terrified to eat a piece of pizza, it's going to really interfere. And that's the other piece, back to the other question that you were asking me, Carolina, is, you know, when these behaviors are interfering in your day-to-day functioning and they're interfering in your life, then you know you have an actual problem.
I'm curious to learn more about other kind of approaches that have worked for different patients.
You're right. It's so hard to do, right? Some children will say, you can't take my phone. I need it for my alarm for school in the morning, you know, so, or I have my papers I'm working on it on my phone. So you're right. Taking the phone is not the answer. But backtracking. So I'll tell you some of the strategies that we do with cognitive behavioral therapy, because we do know that over evaluation of shape and weight drives a lot of this, and the dietary restraint is, again, that really restrictive, you know, really all or nothing, black and white kind of thinking about food and rules about food. Those are areas that we tackle. So we start with having people do food logs, and that gives us tons of diagnostic information. 1 week of food logs can just tell me a wealth of information about what's going on with this person. And in the food logs, it's not just the food. We have them record their thoughts and feelings. So that is a gold mine as well, because if the person, every time they eat a piece of bread, right, I feel terrible, I feel guilty, I feel disgusting. These are ways that we can start right away identifying, you know, what the rules are, so that we can change the rules and we can help them modify and eat more flexibly. So we start with food logs. We do a lot of cognitive work around those thoughts that can be very extreme, that, you know, I'm not allowed to do this, I shouldn't be doing this, I'm going to be fat if I eat this, I'm going to be fat if I don't exercise. We're going to tackle a lot of the thoughts around that. And then we're really going to help them trying to have a more balanced life. And that's something parents can really pay attention to and do, not just therapists. We do a pie chart exercise with them to help them look at how much of their daily time is spent worrying about and focusing on shape, weight, eating. For a lot of these kids, it's half or 3/4 of what they're thinking about. And as you know, children should be out doing other things than spending half or 3/4 of their time thinking about their weight and their shape. So parents can help in this way. And I do have parents, I'll say to them, enroll them in an activity, a hobby, spend more time with the family, have them walk the dog, have them like do other things besides, you know, just sit up in their rooms looking at their phones. The more that someone can have other areas of interest and other activities to focus on, the less of that, you know, sort of pie chart will be left for just over evaluation of shape and weight. So even a volunteer job, or, you know, working at a summer camp, anything that they can do to just take away that, again, that isolation where it's just them and that influencer, or them and that phone, where, you know, they're just looking and searching for other ways to be thin. It can really help to have more activities that are more diversified and take away from that over evaluation of shape and weight being the primary use of the teen's time.
Well, there you have it. Excessive social media use linked with disordered eating can be pretty bad for the teenage brain. While social media is good for social connection at times, disordered eating messages, images, and trends get through, and that can warp a teenager's way on how they view life. If you liked this video and want to learn more about the social media and digital media topics that come about in our clinic, check us out at psychchild.com and on our social media pages below. Have a great day.